This is part two in a small series of videos with me, Matthew Slater, and Dill Green. And we're going to talk about mutual credit now as a solution to many of the problems that occur with the existing monetary system. So previously, we talked about how money is created as interest-bearing debt, almost all of it from commercial banks, and that causes problems, partly because it's from the bank and partly because it carries interest. So what if you could create money not from the bank and not at interest? Meaning, what if we could lend each other credit, interest-free? And that works when groups of people come together and they trust each other just so far as they need to trade with each other on a day-to-day or day-to-week basis. And they supply goods and services to each other, trusting that the other members of the group will also supply goods and services within the group. Dill.
So the easiest way to imagine this in your own experience is that groups of friends who go to a bar or a pub will very often take it in turns to buy the drinks. And inevitably somebody has to leave early before it's their round. And everybody keeps a sort of tally in their head of roughly who is, making sure that they take their turn and who tries to duck their turn a little bit too often. And we all know roughly how much to trust the other people in our group. And also when strangers come in, sometimes we carefully just don't buy them a drink because we aren't sure whether they're going to reciprocate. So we all know on a small scale that this sort of trust credit machinery can work. But if we want it to work on a larger scale, we have to have a slightly more formalized system. And that's what mutual credit is.
So we don't invent a new unit of account. In a business-to-business mutual credit system, you use the national currency as a measure of your indebtedness or increditedness with relation to the rest of the group. So when you supply something to the group, it's not that you will receive any money or even receive any credit, but your account on the system will go up. So your balance will go up by a certain number of pounds, say, and the balance of the person that you gave your stuff to will go down by that same number of pounds. And that means that on a mutual credit ledger, all the balances add up to zero. And that's symbolic of the fact that all the relationships are just between members of the group and nothing has entered or left the group.
So what's important about this is trust, obviously. What enables you to buy something before you've earned anything, let's say, is that you are a trusted member of the group. It's assumed that you won't simply buy a few things, have your account in the negative, and then just disappear. And of course, there are governance mechanisms in mutual credit systems that deter people from doing that. But really, the great deterrent to doing that is that actually, if you are any sort of economic actor, you rely on the circularity of the economy. If you're a producer selling things, you also are a consumer buying things. You're usually buying something, adding value to it somehow and selling it on. And if everybody in that circle of production and consumption is working together, everybody gets a little share of the combined value production of the group. And to absent yourself from that group by, cheating is just like cheating on buying rounds in the pub. And eventually no one will buy you a drink and no one will sit with you. And it's just no fun.
So you have this trade-off, whereas normally you can go to the bank and beg and receive this hard universal currency, but at a cost of interest and at a cost of begging. Or in a mutual credit system, you trust your friends, and for that you get this free money, or at least free local liquidity, which is free to issue and also pretty much free to use. And so you have a very low friction and high liquidity between the members of the group. And that's why around the world there are hundreds, if not thousands, of business barter networks that do this. They'll have typically a few hundred members. A small business will administer the network and help to allocate the credit, and members will pay for membership and they'll pay transaction fees in order to access this free liquidity from the other members.
So the obvious question that comes in about now is, well, that sounds great, but what's to stop someone cheating? And I sort of pointed out a sort of maybe rather theoretical reason for cheating, for not cheating. But the reality is that the reason everyone worries about cheating is that the pool of other users of state currencies that you're in includes millions and millions of people. And of course, you can't keep tabs on them. You don't trust them. So the reason we trust in state money is because there's a whole legal apparatus, courts and rules and eventually tanks that guarantee that that money won't be allowed to be corrupted by free riders. In a mutual credit system, we need much stronger trust because nobody's got any tanks and nobody wants to go to court over a few hundred made up units. So what we require is high trust. And that means that these networks need to be relatively small. As Matthew says, maybe 100 businesses might be as high as they would go without needing a stronger and stronger central authority, which would reduce trust, which would reduce the liquidity of the currency. And so that leads us on to the third episode in this mini-series. Unless Matthew's got another point to make. No. Okay, right. See you in part 3.